Hey, everyone. Welcome to episode 6 of the Bulldog Alley podcast. It is June 13th. I am your co-host, Cole Forsman, joined as always by the wonderful Asher Ali.
What up, Cole? How you doing, bro?
Not too bad, Asher. Summer hasn't really kicked off here in Spokane consistently. Kind of sucks, but we're getting close to the NBA draft, so that's always fun to keep an eye on, prospects and whatnot. College baseball still going on, so pretty glued to the TV still. How about you?
Yeah, man. Same. We still got the NBA finals on right now, NHL Stanley Cup championship on right now. Real quick, because right now tonight is going to be game 5 of the finals. I know probably by the time this comes out, the game already happened. So let's see how bad our predictions are. What do you got tonight, Cole?
Ooh, it's in Oracle, or not Oracle, but it's in San Francisco. God, it's gonna get weird to say.
Yeah.
I think the Warriors pull it out. I'll say Warriors by 5.
Okay. Cool. I think I'm going Celtics. I think I'm gonna go Celtics by 3. I think that's where I'm gonna go with. I don't know. I just like the pattern is Celtics win odd games, Warriors win an even game. So I'm gonna stick to that. And the Warrior and the Celtics haven't lost back to back, which I know doesn't really mean anything, but at the same time it kind of does. So I don't know. I think game 6 will be a winner go home for the Warriors at home though. So I'm hoping the series goes 7 though. It's been really fun so far.
Yeah, fair point. I don't know. I can't see Steph and the Warriors. The experience, I feel like at some point is going to have to show through. I know Clay's been off and on as his running mate, but I think tonight they pull it together. But Jason Tatum's been unreal, and so has Jaylen Brown at times. So
yeah, Jaylen Brown's been really that dude, I think, for him so far. So it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, and of course that'll all happen after this. So you guys can probably make fun of our prediction, who was wrong and how far off we were.
I was gonna say one of us is definitely gonna be wrong. So.
Yeah, one of us picked. Yeah. But we'll just kind of hop right into some Gonzaga news. Had the GU baseball coach, Mark Machtolf, was arrested on Friday night in Reardon, a town outside of West Spokane, for a DUI. The police report said that Machtolf was seen kind of driving erratically. Officer followed him to a store parking lot where he came out of the store, clearly stumbling and whatnot, and he was later pulled over. Shortly after that, he did the physical, or the, what do they call it, the tests on the scene, but refused to do a breathalyzer on the spot. He was then taken in under suspicion of DUI and turned in a BAC level of over 3 times the legal limit. So yeah, unfortunate news. Just a reminder that it's not okay to drink and drive, no matter what circumstance it is.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's unfortunate for sure. With the season just ending for the team, I'm not going to try to get in the head of Coach Machtolf at all, but it's just a tough time, I think, for anybody on that team. And it's a time where, the players, the coaches are always there to be for their players, and they're trying to lift their players up and, improve them, not just improve them on the field or on the court or wherever, but improve them throughout life. And this is a time where the players can step up for their coach and they can be there for them and let them know that, this is something they can move on from and learn from. It's a really big lesson. It's something that Gonzaga players have had to deal with before, not on the baseball team, but on the basketball team, as far as what happened earlier on Labor Day weekend last year, with Coach Few. And what's really unfortunate about it is just that it's now, I don't know, Gonzaga is a school that's definitely growing in its appeal to athletes and students all around. And seeing, 2 longtime leaders on campus get struck with something that's tough, like a DUI. It doesn't look good for the school, but at the same time, it's more just about surrounding these coaches with love and letting them know that, this is something that they can improve upon, and it doesn't define them as a coach or a person. And it'd be really cool to see how. Oh, okay. It'd be really cool to see just how I think the players react to this, and just I hope next season, everybody kind of shows love for Coach Mactoff, because it's a tough situation for sure.
Yeah. I know the Gonzaga athletic director, Chris Sanford, he released a statement. I'm having trouble finding it right now, but it was basically just they wanted to respect Mactoff's privacy at the moment. So not many more details have come out of that. Like you said, it is unfortunate, especially for someone like Mactoff, who has been almost at Gonzaga for 20 years now. And yeah, we'll continue to follow that situation, but it's in the off season right now. And I'm sure Gonzaga is going to handle this as internally as they can, just like they did earlier this year with Coach Few.
Yeah. And it just shows, that, like, people are human, for better or for worse.
Exactly.
Even, it doesn't matter how old you are, you still, you fail, you come up short sometimes, in bigger ways than others. But it's just, how do you learn from this? How do you grow? We're all just humans, and that's what we're trying to do at the end of the day.
Yeah. No
Just
matter
don't drink and drive too. Just don't drink and drive. Please don't.
No, doesn't matter, coach, player, or if you're just, an average Joe that isn't an athlete or a celebrity. The law applies to everyone, and life lessons are to be learned for everyone. And these are still humans, even though we put celebrities and athletes on a pedestal. Sometimes we are all capable of making the same mistakes as our friends and peers. So anywho, we'll get into sort of a lighter note. Asher, I'm going to credit you with this idea, talking about moving gears here to basketball. Kind of already looking ahead to next season now that the draft's approaching. Of course, guys across the country have declared whether they're going to stay or not, come back to their schools. That applies for transfers as well. Freshmen and underclassmen sort of taking that next leap at their respective schools after all the turnover has been processed. And we just kind of wanted to give you guys, the listeners, our top 10 returners for men's basketball in the WCC. This list, of course, subjective, I should say, but I think we have an idea of who the best bucket getters and who the best players are going to be next season, right?
Yeah.
As far as returners go.
Yes, for sure. And this was a fun list to compile, because it was a little bit challenging, because I had some ideas of players I wanted to include or add, because I was like, they're maybe a senior, but they're coming out for a grad year, or some players I just purely missed on what grade they were entering. And then there were some other players that were transferring in and out, but these are just players strictly that were in the WCC last year and are returning to the same program. And we're ranking those players today. We each picked out 10, and we can kind of just jump through the list. Cole, do you want to get us started with yours?
Yeah, sure. I'll start. Do we kind of want to, I have an order. Because at first I kind of just threw a list together, no particular order. I tried to rank. This is probably the best I'm going to be able to do because I'm indecisive. But number one, and I think you and I can both come to this consensus, it's going to be Drew Timme. I don't think we need to even mention his resume at this point. We all know he's one of the best players in the country, and he's going to be back with Gonzaga. He'll be a force to be reckoned with. My number two is Khalil Shabazz, fifth year. He's entering his fifth year. Now in college basketball, he's at USF. Number three, I have Julian Strother. Of course, we all know him. Great Zag. Number four, I have entering his second year, Houston Mallett from Pepperdine. Then I have Logan Johnson from St. Mary's. He's entering his fifth year. And rounding out the top, next is number six. Fusini Traore. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Traore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Traore.
Second year guy out of BYU. Next, Keyshawn Justice from Santa Clara. Alex Dukas from St. Mary's. Moses Wood from Portland. And last but not least, Tyler Robertson from Portland as well.
Mm-hmm. Cole, tell me a little bit about your take on Justice and Moses Wood. Those are the two players that you had on your list that I did not include. And we'll get into my list in a second. I just want to hear kind of your takes. What do you see from both those guys? They're both entering their 5th year at their respective schools. I just want to get your take. What do you see from them kind of growth-wise going into next season?
Yeah, for Keyshawn Justice, obviously he's going to be, without his great running mate, Jalen Williams, who did a lot for that Santa Clara team. So obviously I see Keyshawn kind of taking a bigger role than he had last year. And he was already all WCC second team last season. He was very good. Solid scorer while being, good shooter. He was top 5 in WCC in 3-pointers made. He was top 10 in offensive win shares and offensive rating. And I just sort of see him as an experienced guy who is going to be stepping into a larger role. He's a great shooter. He played solid against the Zags last season. So I kind of see him just taking the next step in that regard. And then Moses Wood from Portland, Portland didn't receive a whole lot of love last season. It was a tough year for them for, a whole lot of roster turnover from the previous year, new head coach. But Moses Wood was quietly all WCC honorable mention, solid score. He was top 10 in most statistical categories from points. He had 3rd best true shooting percentage last season. So sort of turnover prone, turnover heavy. But I think him along with Robertson and that whole core, you include, Chris Austin as well. I think another year with all those guys together, I think all 3 of them really are going to be better. I just sort of see Moses Wood as taking the next jump, the biggest jump among those 3.
Yeah. Yeah, those were both guys that I had like kind of just missing out on my top 10. Wood especially, he's a good, really solid 3-point shooter. I kind of have him in the same range as like Rasir Bolton, who I'll just, little spoiler right now, is also I left off my list, just barely though. So both those guys really solid shooters. You never know, like both of them, one of those two or both of them could just be just lights out from 3 and rack up probably the most points to WCC next season. It's entirely possible. But no, so my top 10 starts off the same as yours. And probably just what anybody you ask this question to across the entire country. And it's going to be Drew Timme, coming back for a really solid senior year, we hope. Now, number 2 for me, though, I have Houston Mallett going into his sophomore year at Pepperdine. We can talk about him more later, but I just think the kid's a dog at 6'5". Just a huge all-time scoring threat. Pepperdine always seems to have one of those guys in their backcourt. Julian Strother, then for me, goes in as number 3. We know Julian. He's going to come back and do his thing. Then number 4, I have Khalil Shabazz, who I see taking the next step when Jamari Bouye steps away from the program for the pros next season. Number 5, I have Alex Dukas from St. Mary's. Number 6, I have Anton Watson for Gonzaga. Number 7, Logan Johnson's returning for his grad year at SMC. I learned from Andy Katz earlier today, which is great. Number 7, number 8, apologies. I have, number 7, Logan Johnson. Number 8, Tyler Robinson from Portland. The big man that can shoot the rock. That's always kind of an impressive little dual combo there. Number 9 for me is Traore from BYU. And rounding out my top 10, I have Julian Rishwain, the shooting guard from USF, entering his junior year. I think the 2 players that I have on you don't are Rishwain and Watson, right? Those are the 2.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So Watson, real quick, I do think he's going to start next year coming off the bench for Gonzaga. But it also depends on what lineup he wants to run with. But I do think in a 6-man, 7-man role, I think he's going to be electric. I think we've seen steady improvement from him every single year. And also the big thing for me every year is he gets more and more comfortable with the ball in his hand. That just means he's going to be more of a threat on the offensive side of the ball. And towards the end of last season, especially during the postseason, he was definitely very confident in the low and the high post. So I'm looking for those to improve a lot. And maybe if he even gets a little bit of a mid-range jumper, Watson can be definitely a dude for Gonzaga, like one of the fiercest six men probably the entirety of college basketball. Rishwain, last year he saw spotty minutes for USF. Like some games he would see a lot of time, and some games he wouldn't. Kind of just depending on how his shooting was going. Kind of been like Duncan Robinson esque, I guess, for Miami Heat. A little bit. Well, when he was on, man, this kid was on. He was lights out against us. I remember both times we played him. He almost single-handedly led USF on a comeback when they were down by like 20 points. They got back to within single digits because he went on like a four he hit four straight threes or something like that against us last season. And I'm just looking for him to take that next step, be a more primary ball handler. Like I said, kind of in the same vein as Shabazz when Bouye leaves. I think he's going to step into more of a heavy role offensively for USF. He's a little bit of a defensive liability, but he just increased. He's already tenacious though, so he just can't get in too much foul trouble. And I think the kid will be pretty good next year. So that's my top 10. As far as where you want to start talking about Traore, BYU a little bit?
Yeah, sure. This guy, I didn't really see his impact a whole lot. Like at first, like I knew, when we played them, he kind of got into a foul trouble early on against us, and so it was kind of hard to see firsthand in person. But you look at the rest of his year, he was all WCC freshman team and just extremely efficient. Like you could tell he had a good feel for the game outside of some discipline areas when it comes to, being a good shot blocker, but that kind of goes, hand in hand. He was top, one of the top shot blockers in the league last year. He was great on the boards, tenacious for someone his size. And he was even top 5 in player efficiency rating and total box score plus minus for the WCC. So I think next year, even now without Caleb Lohner, who, if he hadn't transferred, I think he could have been on both of our lists, at least in that conversation for sure. But now with him gone, he's going to see even a larger role. BYU is going to lose out a couple of key players for next year. Barcellos won't be back, of course. So I think he's going to see a lot more opportunity both on offensive side with that Lohner, and then I think his impact, just him another year of developing, getting that college body for a basketball player. I think he's going to help him a lot. I don't know, spacing the floor isn't really his thing, but he's still an athletic freak. So, and yeah, I just love the way he plays, high energy, high motor. And he's already, shown that he can be a really smart player moving forward. So I think BYU's got a nice solid piece down low for the next few years, probably. What do you kind of see from him?
Yeah, I see somebody who the offense at BYU can be run through in these next couple of years. Well, I think BYU's in a recalibrating mode as they get ready to leave the WCC and head to the Big 12. So this last year here at the WCC, I think it's a proving year for Traore as far as whether or not he's going to be a piece for them, long term for 2 or 3 more years after this. But he was he averaged 9.7 points per game last year on dang near 60% field goal shooting. And also, like, as a bigger body, he's going to get to the line a decent amount, especially when you run the offense through him more and more. And he shot like 78% from the charity stripe. So, he's not a liability at all in that sense. You gotta like, some teams may, hack a shack or whatever, but you can't really do that with this guy. He's gonna take you to the hoop, and he's gonna make you pay for it with a couple and ones that he's gonna convert on. So that's big. And then he was also number 2 on BYU and shots blocked last season behind Baxter. So when, you put that together and you just see more growth development, maybe he even gets a little bit taller, his wingspan increases. Those numbers are going to tick up too for him naturally. And he just gets, just smarter with his physicality. That was the thing that really got him into a lot of trouble at Gonzaga. I think he tried to go too hard at both Drew Timme and Chet Holmgren, kind of thinking he would just kind of body them out of the way. And they're definitely, both of them are a little bit more for kind of finesse guys. And he got caught lacking a few times, especially in the first half, and that kind of had him sit for a while, and he couldn't make as big of an impact. But when he was in the game, he was an offensive rebounding machine, and we struggled to get boards over him. So just, you put all that together, that's a kid who's going to be an impact player in this conference for at least for one more year, I guess, until the BYU's out the door, not him quite entirely.
Yeah. And, we saw him, he played very well, the WCC tournament, against USF. He was kind of big in the Cougars win there. So he's definitely on the up and up. Now you're really high on Houston Mallet. I have him, he's top 5 for me as returner, but he's was he number 2 for you? Correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Talk a little bit about him, because we're both swinging on upside here.
Yep.
From someone, entering their second year.
Yeah. I think this kid's upside is as good as you've seen from a WCC guard in a long time. I guess, Gonzaga has had its fair share of guards who have had a lot of upside, like a Jalen Suggs or something, but then they're out the door right away. You don't get to see them quite develop at the college level so much. Whereas Mallet was inserted into a starting role the moment he got to Pepperdine, and he just ran with it. He realized that he was the guy who could create offense for the rest of his team. I think, he was, he was a dual guard in every sense. I think, he took the ball at the court a lot. He wasn't quite the numbers won't really show it as far as his assists are concerned, but if you look at his tape, the kid is definitely able to find those passing lanes when it's the right time. He does have a high, his shot tendency is definitely up there. Like if this was 2K, he'd probably have like an A to an A plus shot tendency. But no, he's at a size like 6'5" and lanky, and he's also pretty explosive too. I'll give him that. He's not just like because sometimes those skinnier, lankier guys, you're like, oh, he's fluid and he's smooth, but he doesn't have that explosive power off the jump. Nah, man, this kid can get off. This kid can get off on one foot and make you pay for it if you even has you beat by half a step. So and the other reason why I see his numbers taking off really big time too is because I don't think the WCC is full of a lot of great defensive guards next season. So I think in conference, I think he's going to do a really good job blowing by guards, and making them pay for not having their wits about them when they're on him. But he might, then he'll have to go up against some forwards, and he can maybe draw 2 defenders and then dish it off to another guy on Pepperdine. But I just see him just kind of proliferating as far as his stock's concerned. I'm no draft expert, especially for not just this season, but not just the 2022 draft, but the 2023 draft. But I could see his name being up there as far as maybe a first round pick next year, a late first or something. And you look at a guy like, to me, he kind of looks like a more athletically inclined Jalen Williams. And Jalen Williams is an athlete for sure, but just he doesn't have the length of the size that Mallet does. So I think Mallet can be the next kind of Jalen Williams, and I love Jalen Williams. So I see Mallet definitely taking that spot in the WCC.
Yeah, I mean, when you just started talking about him like that, and his frame, too, it does sound a lot like Jalen Williams, a high usage guy. And yeah, that said, it wasn't the most efficient player last season for Pepperdine, but I think you kind of just put that to the side for a second, as a freshman who did have to start 29 games. And yeah, I think next season is going to be a big year for Pepperdine in general, because they do have, not just him, they have Maxwell Lewis, who didn't start nearly as much as Houston Mallet, but they also have Mike Mitchell Jr., who has showed promise as a guard. So I think those 3 are a great core for Pepperdine to sort of build around. And yeah, I think he could be a really good bucket getter in the WCC next season. So sort of banking on that high potential. He was one of the better recruits, correct me if I'm not, that Pepperdine has had in a very, very long time, him and Maxwell Lewis, those 2. So they'll be fun to watch for sure.
Yeah. And it makes Pepperdine, Pepperdine last year was definitely an afterthought kind of program. They weren't really, and I remember going into covering Pepperdine games. It was like, oh, look out for that freshman. He's pretty good, but there wasn't much tape on him at that point. Now there's the tape. Now there's the reputation that he has, and I think more people on the West Coast are going to be looking out for Mallet when he comes to town with Pepperdine. So that'll be really fun. Next, you want to talk about Tyler Robertson a little bit? Portland's perhaps prodigal son. Maybe in some ways. I don't know. To me, he's kind of like an anomaly kind of player. So I just want to kind of get your thoughts on him.
Yeah. He was number 10 for me. And normally I wouldn't say that about somebody who was probably like the guy for his program last season. I mean, he did everything for Portland. Moses Wood was great, but it was clearly the Tyler Robertson show for them. And of course, being on Portland, he's not going to get a whole lot of hype. He is one of those Eastern Washington transfers that Coach Liggins was able to lure down to Portland. He started all the games for them, of course. He is an anomaly. It's hard to factor in someone like him who has all the counting numbers and is just, a great bucket getter when it doesn't contribute a whole lot to winning basketball. And I think that's why he was number 10 for me. A big man that could shoot, and that's obviously valuable in any level of basketball. He's 6'8", and he was still one of the better shooters in the conference last year. So I think, again, I kind of alluded to it earlier, Portland still last year, a lot of turnover. I think this year could be, I think it'll be a lot better for them. Now a whole year together, they have a whole off season to improve, build that chemistry. But and I think it's going to be on Tyler Robertson's shoulders again this year. So kind of see how he plays and how the rest of that team sort of gels. But what do you think about him? Because I know you had him sort of lower on your list as well.
Yeah, I had him at 8 for a lot of the same reasons, both good and bad. He's the big fish in the small pond, literally, at Portland. He's that dude, which maybe works to their detriment a little bit, just because he's not a fast-paced player. He plays quick. He plays decently quick, but he's not the guy who's going to push the pace for a team that needs the pace to be pushed in order for them to even get out to a lead at any point. But with that being said, like you said, his counting stats are pretty off the walls as far as a Portland player we've seen the past couple of years. So he's like, for that, he's going to grab your attention. And he is like, he can at 6'6", but a decent size, though he can still play. He plays a big 2 and a big 3. If you need him to drop down to the 4, he can. I don't recall him being a stellar defender, to be honest, but I do know that he can at least hold his own at the 3 spot. So just kind of put him, maybe in the high post or something around there in the mid range, and he'll be all right. But a lot of the same things. He's going to be the guy that they run their offense through, him and Moses Wood. But is that a recipe for success for them? Is that a formula that's going to lead them to a lot of wins? That I can't tell you, but who knows? He might be.
Yeah. He was top 10 in the WCC for steals, but we all know that steals don't translate to how great a defensive player is to begin with. But he's going to come back as all the returners. He leads all returners next season in minutes played last season. Wow, that jumped out of my mouth. But I don't see his usage going down either. So probably another great counting year for him. But we'll see how that Portland team sort of looks going forward.
Yeah. Last player I kind of want to talk with you about, Cole, before we get out of here and get to watching Game 5 of the finals, is Khalil Shabazz. To me, I'm a big fan of his. Watching him play last year against us. I loved watching that pairing of him and Jamari just kind of tear it up a little bit. And he had a bad shooting out against us. It was kind of funny when they played us in the regular season. I think he had one bad game and Jamari had one bad game. And then the other game, they kind of took over for each other. But he's a talent for sure. And I just kind of want to get your thoughts on where you see him taking USF next season? Like, where do you see under his tutelage and guidance? Where do you see USF kind of going?
Yeah. Jamari Bouye is gonna be gone. It was fun watching them play together. I probably only say that because, like you said, both of them didn't dominate us. It was usually one or the other. Next season, though, I think he's going to be great. He was all WCC second team this year. He's going to come in as one of clearly the most experienced players in the WCC. This is my fifth year, all of them at USF. So I think he's going to be the leader on the court and in the locker room for them. They're losing, of course, Jamari. They're going to lose the big men that they got from San Diego last season. So as a whole, the roster, we'll see how it plays out. But for Khalil, I think he's just gonna be just as dominant. I think he's gonna have that same impact. He's kind of going for that Drew Timme, like one last ride. He's gonna, try to put the team on his back. But yeah, a great shooter, high volume guy, does it sort of all. He sort of did it all for USF last season. And I kind of think we know who he is, but I think he's just going to excel in a larger role now.
Yeah. And I do think it comes at a cost for USF next season, with Golden leaving, right? Because Golden's out the door for USF, right?
Golden went to Florida, yeah.
Yeah, he went to Florida. That's right. And they also just a bevy of other players that were huge for them last year, not just Jamari. The other one that stands out for me, this is a guy who I was going to have on my list until I realized he was a graduate student, is Johan Masalski. Like, I thought he was going to be there next year. I thought he was a given, and he wasn't. He was battled with injuries all of last season. So a lot of other players have to step up for USF to be anywhere near as prestigious as they were last year. But Khalil is the guy that is definitely going to be there for them when they need them the most, just like the Avatar. So it's going to be really cool to watch him show his stuff, and just, as a smaller guard from Seattle, actually, from the Seattle area. I'm looking forward to when he comes over back to GU and gets to play in the McCarthy. But even other teams that they play next year, I'm not sure how their scheduled non-conference is looking, but it'd be really cool to see him go up against some other top-level guards, because I think, he could have a similar, because, Jamari, you look at Jamari, he was the guy who flew under the radar the entire year until they got to the NCAA tournament, and he balled out against Murray State, and you had all these NBA guys like, yo, who's this dog? Like, he's crazy. I think Khalil can be the same way. Like, he applies a similar pressure against the defense he plays against. Like, he really puts them on their heels and makes them think okay, how are we going to guard this guy? Because he's just kind of a freak when he wants to be. And he just kind of needs to turn up to 11 next season with a younger team. Because I think Josh Coonan is probably going to be their main big man next year. That's at least how I see it unfolding for him. So if he works well off of Coonan, kind of like Masalski worked well off of Bouye, it's gonna be a different looking team, but they can bring it the same kind of energy. And Khalil is the X factor in that. So that's why I had him, high on my list too, because he can kind of turn USF back into a prestigious program if he wants to.
Yeah, we've seen him contribute to winning basketball at a very high level. He's an absolute pest on the defensive side of the floor, just like Jamari was. And as someone who's just a fan of older guys who I've watched for a few years now, I hope he gets to go out on top, or not on top, but he gets to have one last great run like Jamari did. And hopefully he gets sort of the same buzz, more so for the NBA draft next year, but as an undersized guard, it's hard to come by. But yeah, I think the list that we just gave, it was fun to do. I was wondering, how close we were going to be. To only have two different players. Our orders, of course, going to be different, but I speak for myself when I say, you can make a case. Number 6 guy can be number 8, and number 8 could be 10, 10 could be 6, whatever. I think we both I know you mentioned Brazier Bolton barely missing out. Did you have anybody else that you were close to putting in to that number 10 spot?
Moses Wood, I guess it was kind of up there. Um, I can't say I considered Nolan Hickman, but he was somebody who I think is in that kind of 10 to 15 range as far as guys returning next year. And then San Diego has a couple of guys, Marcellus Erlington and Wayne McKinney, the third. Those guys are all McKinney's was a pretty stellar freshman for I think San Diego last year, and Erlington was their rock. So those are the guys who I had that could maybe break into and they have such a good chance of next season being a top 10, top 5 guy. Who knows? It's all up the air at this point. But for the moment, I had them left out, but they can definitely sneak their way in.
Yeah, I think I sort of agree with that. I considered Erlington, Maxwell Lewis from Pepperdine, who was another good freshman for the Waves, Alfonso Anderson from Pacific, kind of just a good scorer, got a lot of buckets last season. And then Chris Austin from Portland, I considered as well. Brazier Bolton too. I think I probably left Bolton off just for the fact that GU has so many guards, and it's like I see some of these other guys just playing a bigger impact. Not to say talent wise, but you're just going to see it on the court more. So
yeah, impact is everything in this conference. It's the little things. It's the inches that you can make up for in the minutes you're playing, and the guys that I think that we listed, the guys that are going to be on the court the most to kind of make those inches up.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And yeah, once again, great fun list to put together, good exercise. Maybe we'll have other themed lists like this and rankings going forward throughout the off season. But for now, I think that kind of covers all the topics we wanted to talk about today. Once again, this was episode number 6 of the Bulldog Alley podcast. I'm your co-host Cole Forsman, Asher Ali.
Yeah.
Asher, enjoy the rest of your week. I will catch you next time. Go ahead, for those listening, go ahead and follow Gonzaga Nation SI on all the social media platforms. Continue listening to our podcast. We appreciate it, guys.